Just days before Christmas in 1996, a 6-year-old boy in the Bronx made a chilling 911 call. Little Esteban Jr. was trying to report something unthinkable.
Yeah.
His parents were dead.
Tragic.
And his family's co-op state, is a place that should be filled with holiday cheer.
Right.
It had become a scene of unimaginable horror.
A horrific discovery.
When police arrived, they found sheetrock saws at the crime scene.
Yeah.
Which right away, suggests a level of violence that goes way beyond typical robbery.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just...
Yeah, it screams personal motive right off the bat.
So for this deep dive, we're going to try to unravel what really happened to Esteban Sr. and Linda Leon.
Okay.
We've got police reports, court transcripts. We even have excerpts from the 911 call itself.
Wow.
And we're going to look at the twists and turns in the investigative techniques that finally cracked the case. And the connections that led police from a seemingly simple home invasion in New York.
Yeah.
All the way to a drug ring in Baltimore.
It's a wild story.
It is a wild story.
And it really highlights how sometimes, the smallest detail can become a crucial piece of evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
You never know what's going to break a case open.
So let's start with that 911 call.
Yeah.
I know we have some excerpts.
Yeah.
What stands out to you about Esteban Jr.'s call?
Well, the first thing that hits you is the terror in his voice. I mean, he's 6 years old. Just 6.
Yeah.
Trying to explain something no child should ever have to witness.
Yeah.
The operator on the other end, she deserves a medal for how she handled that call.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, staying so calm, getting crucial information from a terrified child.
Yeah, and she makes a decision that might surprise some people.
Yeah, what's that?
She disconnects the call.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have thought of that.
And, might seem counterintuitive.
Right.
It's actually a really good example of how procedures in emergency situations aren't always what you expect.
Right.
So in this case, the operator knew that she had enough information to dispatch officers immediately. And by disconnecting, she was actually taking steps to ensure the children's safety.
Okay, I see.
Because there was a chance the perpetrator was still in the home.
Oh, right, of course.
And having a child on the phone, could escalate the situation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And a lot of 911 operators actually have protocols for situations like this, where they need to maintain a connection with the caller,
Right.
but also try to minimize the risks.
Absolutely, safety first.
So the supervisor then called back
Okay.
and was able to keep Esteban Jr. on the line,
Yeah.
get a few more details, and reassure him that help was on the way.
Wow. That supervisor's voice must have been the only thing holding that little boy together.
It's hard to imagine.
In those terrifying moments.
So the police arrive at the co-op. What kind of scene are they walking into?
Well, it's controlled chaos, right? I mean, you've got 3 young children,
Oh, my God.
all covered in their parents' blood,
Yeah.
and a crime scene that initially looks like a straightforward home invasion. The apartment's been ransacked, but then there are the bodies.
Yeah.
Esteban Sr. and Linda, they're bound.
Yeah.
And the level of violence is immediately apparent.
And like we talked about the sheetrock saws.
Right.
Those weren't just for breaking in.
No, they were definitely used to inflict pain. This wasn't a quick in-and-out robbery. This was about sending a message.
So who were Esteban Sr. and Linda?
Okay.
What do we know about their lives?
On the surface, they seemed like an average working-class couple.
Okay.
Esteban owned a bodega.
Huh?
Linda was a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
The kind of family you see every day in the Bronx.
Yeah.
But the investigation uncovered another layer to their story.
Okay, so this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah, buckle up.
Esteban wasn't just a bodega owner.
No, he wasn't.
The DEA had been monitoring him for suspected money laundering,
Oh, wow.
tied to a South American drug cartel.
So this seemingly ordinary couple was connected to international drug trafficking?
Yeah, pretty big twist. I bet the local police weren't too happy about that.
Oh, there was definitely some tension, let me tell you,
Yeah.
between local law enforcement and the DEA.
Right.
In the early stages of the investigation,
Yeah.
the feds were initially reluctant to share information.
Of course, the classic.
It's that classic jurisdictional battle.
Yeah, we see it all the time.
All the time.
But the crime scene itself yielded some pretty crucial evidence.
Oh, yeah, what was that?
The drugs and money hidden in the drop ceiling
There it is.
confirmed the DEA's suspicions.
Yeah.
And it made it clear that Esteban's involvement in the drug trade was a key piece of this puzzle.
Absolutely.
So we've got a brutal double homicide,
Yeah.
a potential drug cartel connection,
Uh-huh.
3 traumatized children.
Right.
Did the police have any leads early on?
Well, the initial investigation, it hit a wall pretty quickly.
Mm.
There were no signs of forced entry,
Okay.
which suggested that the victims knew their attacker. But interviews with neighbors and friends didn't turn up any obvious suspects.
Uh-huh.
And after a few months, the case went cold.
That's where Wendell Stratford comes in.
Exactly 4 years later, the case landed on his desk.
Wow.
And Stratford was known for his meticulous approach to cold cases.
Oh.
I mean, he had this reputation for digging through old files, looking for, those tiny details that others might have missed.
If anything, for a new perspective.
Anything.
So he starts with the crime scene photos,
Yay.
the initial interviews.
Yep.
Anything that could spark a new lead.
Just trying to see the case with fresh eyes.
Then he focuses on something that seemed pretty mundane.
Really? Like what?
Parking ticket.
Parking tickets.
Yeah.
What could those possibly tell you about a double homicide?
I know, right?
I mean, really?
It seems so unrelated.
Totally unrelated.
But you would be surprised how often a parking ticket can crack a case wide open.
Oh, really?
Because perpetrators, they often stake out locations beforehand.
Oh.
And if they're not careful, they might get a ticket while they're doing surveillance.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's all about connecting the dots.
Right.
So Stratford is looking for parking tickets issued in the days leading up to the murders.
Okay.
And he finds a connection to Robert Mitchell Sr.
This is the guy in Baltimore.
Yes.
Yeah.
2 tickets issued just days before the murders led Stratford to Mitchell Sr., who was a mid-level drug dealer operating out of Baltimore.
Got it. So now we have that Baltimore connection.
Yeah.
Was Mitchell Sr. someone that the initial investigation had looked into?
No, his name hadn't come up at all.
Interesting.
But Stratford discovered that Mitchell Sr. had been in contact with Esteban Sr.
Okay.
in days leading up to the murders.
Uh-huh.
So he digs deeper and finds a second person of interest,
Okay.
a woman named Keisha Washington,
Keisha Washington, all right.
also from Baltimore.
So we've got 2 people in Baltimore now.
2 people in Baltimore.
Okay.
What do we know about her at this point?
Well, not much. She was a nurse living in Baltimore. And on the surface, there was no obvious connection to Esteban Sr. or the murders.
Yeah.
But Stratford was starting to piece together a web of connections.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
Stratford finds a link between Mitchell Sr. and Keisha. But it comes from a totally unexpected source.
Okay, what is it?
The name of Keisha's son.
The name of her son.
Yeah.
All right, this is getting good.
It is.
I can't wait to hear what happens next.
Me too.
This is a real cliffhanger.
It is.
We'll have to pick this up in the next part of the deep dive.
We will.
Okay.
I'm hooked.
Me too. Last we left off, Detective Stratford was piecing together these connections between Baltimore and the Bronx, uncovering a link between Robert Mitchell Sr. and this seemingly ordinary nurse named Keisha Washington. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source.
Yeah.
The name of Keisha's son.
Okay.
That seemingly insignificant detail.
A child's name.
Right.
Revealed this crucial connection.
I'm listening.
Keisha's son was Robert Mitchell Jr.
Ah, so she's romantically linked to Mitchell Sr.
Exactly.
The drug dealer from Baltimore who had ties to Esteban Sr.
Yeah.
Talk about a hidden connection.
I know, right?
So how did Stratford even uncover that information?
He used this really clever tactic that you often see in these complex investigations.
Okay.
He went to interview Keisha at Johns Hopkins Hospital where she worked. But he didn't approach her as a homicide detective.
Oh, so he went undercover.
Yeah. He pretended to be investigating child support issues.
Wow, that's brilliant.
I know, right?
So he's playing the long game.
Yeah.
Trying to gain Keisha's trust. Hoping she'll reveal something useful.
Exactly.
Did it work?
It did.
Wow.
During their conversation, Keisha just casually mentioned her son's name, Robert Mitchell Jr.,
Yeah.
completely unaware that she had just handed Stratford a major piece of the puzzle.
Just a slip of the tongue. And it changed everything.
It did. That's amazing.
But at this point, he still doesn't have enough to directly connect Keisha to the murders.
Right.
I mean, she could just be Mitchell Sr.'s girlfriend, not necessarily involved in the crime itself.
Yeah, that's a good piece.
So Stratford knew he needed more.
Okay.
He went back and dug deeper, focusing on those parking tickets issued in the Bronx around the time of the murders.
Right.
And what he found was incriminating, to say the least.
Okay, tell me.
Keisha's car had received multiple parking tickets in the neighborhood where Esteban Sr. and Linda lived.
So that puts her
Right at the scene.
At the scene of the crime?
Yeah, in the days leading up to the murders.
Wow, the evidence is stacking up.
I know. So Stratford has Keisha's car linked to the Bronx. He knows she's connected to Mitchell Sr., who had a motive and a connection to Esteban Sr.
This is getting intense.
I know. What's his next move?
Oh, I'm dying to know.
Armed with this new evidence.
Stratford decided it was time to confront Keisha directly.
Oh, okay.
He brought her in for questioning. And this time, he dropped the child support ruse.
Right, showtime.
He laid out all the evidence he had gathered.
Okay.
Phone records, the parking tickets, the connection to Mitchell Sr.
That must have been a tense moment.
Oh, I bet.
Keisha must have realized that the walls were closing in.
Yeah, did she maintain her innocence or did she crack under pressure?
What happened?
She cracked.
Oh, wow.
Faced with the mounting evidence.
Yeah.
Keisha confessed to her role in the murders.
She confessed?
She did, and her confession revealed the chilling details of that night.
Okay.
The planning, the motive, and the horrific violence that took place inside that family's home.
This is it.
Okay, we've got to hear this.
Yeah, lay out on me.
What did Keisha reveal about that night? What was the motive behind this brutal attack?
I'm all ears.
Well, she confirmed that it was a planned attack.
Okay.
Driven by jealousy and greed.
So Mitchell Sr. resented Esteban Sr.'s wealth. Yeah.
Believing that Esteban was cheating him out of his rightful share of the drug profits.
Right.
Okay.
And Mitchell Sr. had convinced Keisha, her twin brother Kevin Washington, and his girlfriend Denise Henderson,
got it,
to help him rob Esteban Sr.
So they thought there was money in the apartment?
They believed there was a large sum of money and drugs hidden in the apartment.
They were going for the score.
So it wasn't just a random home invasion.
No, it was targeted.
It was targeted, fueled by Mitchell Sr.'s resentment and greed.
It all makes sense now.
I know.
Wow.
Keisha described how they meticulously planned the attack. They drove from Baltimore to New York.
Okay.
They even went shopping for supplies.
Supply like what?
Like duct tape and handcuffs.
Oh, wow. They were prepared.
They knew Esteban Sr. would recognize Keisha.
Right.
So they left her car at a travel plaza.
Okay.
And they took a bus into the city. And then a cab to the Martinez's building.
They were trying to cover their tracks. They were trying to cover their tracks from the very beginning.
Smart, but also sinister.
Yeah, so they get to the apartment building. They're ready to put their plan into action. But Esteban Sr. is actually home.
Oh, that wasn't part of the plan.
Which wasn't part of the plan.
Right.
And Keisha described how they buzzed the apartment.
Yeah.
And Esteban Sr., completely unsuspecting, let them in.
He had no idea.
He was shocked to see them.
Right.
But before he could react, Kevin Washington, Keisha's brother, had already handcuffed him.
Wow, it happened so fast.
I know.
And just imagine the terror that Esteban Sr. and Linda must have felt.
I know. It's hard to imagine.
At that moment.
Realizing that these people that they presumably knew, at least in some capacity, were not there for a friendly visit.
This is bad news.
And things escalated very quickly.
Oh, I bet.
So while Kevin's restraining Esteban Sr., Keisha and Denise duct-taped Linda, binding her hands, feet, and mouth.
They're silencing them.
And then they did the same to Esteban Sr.
So they can't call for help.
Effectively silencing them both.
Wow, this is just awful.
I know, and this is the part that's just incredibly difficult to hear. You know, we talked about those sheetrock saws earlier.
Right, those awful tools.
It's hard to even fathom what those tools were used for in this situation.
I don't even want to think about it.
Keisha described how Mitchell Sr. started torturing Esteban Sr. and Linda with the sheetrock saws.
Oh, God.
Demanding to know where they kept their money and drugs.
He was convinced they were hiding something.
He was convinced they were hiding a large sum of cash.
Yeah.
And he was determined to get it no matter the cost.
This is just pure evil.
And we have to remember there are 3 young children.
Oh, my gosh, right?
Were in the apartment while all this was happening.
I know. I can't even imagine.
It's just unimaginable.
The trauma those poor kids must have experienced.
And Keisha described how Linda, despite being bound and gagged, was desperately pleading with them not to hurt her children.
She was trying to protect her kids.
She was begging for their lives.
Wow.
But her pleas only seemed to enrage Mitchell Sr. further.
This guy is a monster.
What kind of person could inflict that kind of terror?
I know, it's just sickening.
On a mother in front of their children.
It's just beyond comprehension.
And Keisha went on to reveal an even more horrific detail.
There's more.
She said that Mitchell Sr. dragged Linda into the children's bedroom
Oh,
and assaulted her
this is just monstrous.
while her children were forced to watch.
I can't believe this.
A level of depravity that's difficult to comprehend.
It really is.
So Linda's assaulted.
Yeah.
Both she and Esteban Sr. are being tortured
Uh-huh.
with these sheetrock saws.
Right.
What happens next?
Oh, God, I don't know if I can handle this.
How does this nightmare end?
Tell me.
Keisha describes hearing Mitchell Sr. demand one last time
Uh-huh.
that they reveal the location of the money and drugs.
Yeah.
And then she says she heard 2 gunshots.
Oh, no.
Both Esteban Sr. and Linda
God.
shot in the head, executed right there in their own home while their children were just feet away.
That's just heartbreaking.
I know. But Keisha's confession reveals one final act of cruelty.
Yeah.
Before fleeing the apartment, they ransacked the place,
Uh-huh.
stealing whatever money and drugs they could find.
Of course.
But they also stole Christmas presents from under the tree.
What? No way.
Gifts that were meant for the Martinez children,
Oh, my God.
taken by the very people who had just murdered their parents.
That's just beyond words.
I know the callousness, the disregard for human life,
Right.
and then to steal Christmas presents
Yeah.
meant for these traumatized children.
Wow.
It's just a whole other level of depravity.
It really is.
But thankfully, this isn't where the story ends.
Oh, good.
Wendell Stratford, armed with Keisha's confession,
Right.
is about to set in motion a chain of events that will finally bring those responsible to justice.
Thank goodness.
It's about time.
I can't wait to hear how this unfolds.
Me too. So we just heard the devastating details of that night in December of 1996.
Yeah.
The brutal murders of Esteban Sr. and Linda, the terror their children endured.
It's really hard to believe that anyone could be so callous, so cruel.
I know, especially during the holiday season.
Right. It really makes you question humanity.
But even amidst all that darkness, we also see these glimpses of strength and resilience.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly, in Detective Stratford.
Yeah.
He didn't give up on this case.
No, he didn't.
He was determined to bring those responsible to justice.
And he did.
And he did. So Keisha's confession puts the wheels in motion. What happens next?
Well, Stratford used Keisha's testimony to track down Denise Henderson,
Okay.
Kevin Washington's girlfriend. Remember, she
Right.
was also there during the murders.
Right.
Both Keisha and Denise had pointed the finger at their boyfriends as the
Yeah.
ones who actually pulled the trigger.
Right. Trying to minimize their own roles in the crime.
Exactly.
So did Denise corroborate Keisha's story?
She did, but reluctantly. And her testimony, it actually painted an even more disturbing picture of what happened to Linda that night.
Oh, no.
Denise confirmed that Kevin Washington had sexually assaulted Linda
Oh, God.
in front of her children,
That's just...
adding another layer of horror to
Is
this
her-
already horrific crime.
Did Denise try to justify her actions at all?
She claimed that she tried to stop Kevin, but her attempts were weak at best.
Right.
She ultimately admitted to helping restrain the victims
Yeah.
and keeping the children occupied while the murders took place.
So she was an active participant
Oh, yeah.
in this horrific crime,
Absolutely.
despite her attempts to minimize her involvement.
Right.
What about Robert Mitchell Sr.?
Yeah.
I know he initially tried to deny any involvement, saying he wasn't even at the apartment that night.
Oh, so he tried to play the innocent bystander?
He did.
Did it work?
No, his story was full of holes,
Right.
and Stratford saw right through it.
Of course.
He knew that Mitchell Sr. was the mastermind behind this whole operation.
Yeah, the one who orchestrated the entire attack.
So Stratford has confessions
Yeah.
from Keisha and Denise,
Yeah.
placing all 4 suspects at the scene.
Right.
Did all 4 of them go to trial?
No, Mitchell Sr.,
Okay.
seeing that the evidence against him was overwhelming,
Right.
decided to cut a deal with the prosecution.
Oh, wow.
He agreed to testify against Kevin Washington in exchange for a reduced sentence.
So he throws his accomplice under the bus
It happens all the time.
to save his own skin.
Self-preservation kicks in and loyalty goes out the window.
But even without Mitchell Sr.'s testimony, the prosecution had a very strong case.
They did.
They had the confessions,
Yeah.
the physical evidence,
Uh-huh.
the parking tickets linking all 4 suspects to the crime scene.
Right. But I imagine the most powerful testimony
Okay.
came from the victim's children.
Esteban Jr., who was 12 years old at the time of the trial,
Wow.
and his brother, who was 13, both took the stand
They did it.
and bravely recounted the horrors they had witnessed that night.
I can't even imagine.
It's hard to fathom the strength it must have taken.
It's incredible.
And Esteban Jr. even identified Mitchell Sr. and Kevin Washington in court,
Wow.
leaving no doubt in anyone's mind about their guilt.
Powerful.
So they're all found guilty. What were their sentences?
Okay, let's see.
Keisha and Denise, who pleaded guilty to robbery,
Right.
were each sentenced to 8 to 15 years.
That seems light.
It does seem light, considering the brutality of the crime.
Yeah, and their involvement.
Even if they weren't the ones who pulled the trigger.
Well, remember, they cooperated with the prosecution.
Right.
And they testified against Mitchell Sr. and Kevin Washington.
Right.
So their sentences reflected their lesser roles in the actual killings.
What about Mitchell Sr. and Kevin Washington?
Robert Mitchell Sr. received 50 years to life.
Wow.
For his role as the mastermind.
Yeah.
And the brutal torture.
Right.
He inflicted on Esteban Sr. and Linda.
And Kevin Washington.
Kevin Washington, who was convicted of murder and sexual assault,
Yeah.
was sentenced to 75 years.
So both Mitchell Sr. and Kevin Washington will likely spend the rest of their lives behind bars.
That's a small measure of justice.
Yeah.
For the Martinez family.
But at least these men won't be able to harm anyone else.
Right. And that's important.
It is.
It's a bittersweet victory, for sure.
It is. Justice was served.
Uh-huh.
But the trauma inflicted on the Martinez children is immeasurable.
I mean, those boys.
Yeah.
They lost their parents in the most horrific way imaginable.
It was days before Christmas.
And they had to carry the burden of that trauma,
Right.
the memories of that night.
Through their childhood.
Yeah.
Into adulthood.
It's just heartbreaking.
You know, one of the things that stayed with me long after I first encountered this case was the strength and resilience of the Martinez children.
I agree.
To endure such a tragedy at such a young age.
Yeah.
And then have the courage to face their parents' killers in court.
It's remarkable.
It really makes you wonder about the long-term effects of trauma like that.
It does.
How do you even begin to heal from something so horrific?
It's a question we can only hope has a positive answer for the Martinez brothers.
I agree.
Their story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable darkness,
Right.
the human spirit can find a way to survive, to persevere, and to seek justice.
So this deep dive into the Martinez-Leon case has been a difficult journey.
It has.
It's a story of unimaginable violence, betrayal, and loss.
Yeah, but it's also a story of resilience.
Right.
Determination.
And the pursuit of justice.
Absolutely.
Detective Wendell Stratford's dedication to uncovering the truth,
Yeah.
even years after the case went cold, is truly inspiring.
And I think it serves as a powerful reminder to all of us that we have a responsibility to speak out against violence, to support victims and their families, and to never give up on the pursuit of justice no matter how difficult that journey might be.
We can only hope that the Martinez brothers have found a way to heal and build meaningful lives for themselves.
Yeah.
Carrying the memory of their parents with them, but not letting the trauma of that night define their future.
Well said.
And for our listeners, if this deep dive has left you thinking about the long-term impacts of violent crime, the importance of seeking justice, or the incredible resilience of the human spirit, we encourage you to explore those thoughts further.
Absolutely.
Engage in conversations, seek out resources.
Yeah.
And remember that even small acts of kindness and support can make a difference in the lives of those who have endured unimaginable tragedy.
A very powerful message to end on.
I agree.